Hello and welcome to Adam Street. We're here with Tim Ringo, an HR guru, to talk us through a little bit about HR and your workforce as a growing SME. So, hello Tim.
Hello.
How are you?
Good morning. Yep, fine, thank you.
Good stuff. So perhaps for our readers and viewers might not know who exactly you are or what you do, perhaps you could fill us in a little bit first about who you are and
Sure.
what you do.
Yeah. Well, for the past 20 years, I sort of fell into an accidental career, as I like to call it, which is focusing on how companies make the most out of their workforce, which otherwise is known sometimes as human resources.
Yeah.
I started out 20 years ago, straight out of university. I joined what was Anderson Consulting back then. The idea was to do it for a year and go back to university and get my master's. But 16 years later, I was still there and was a partner in Accenture, which it became in year 2001. And then in 2006, I went to IBM and led IBM's human capital consulting business, which was for HR consulting for IBM clients. And recently, earlier this year, I left and joined a small company, which I'm trying to build at the moment. So very exciting times from that perspective. But accidental in terms of I didn't intend to go down this career, but I got so fascinated by it early on in my career and have sort of gone from there, really.
Okay, so it wasn't something, so as you say, it was something you fell into.
Yes.
What did you want to do before, out of interest? Did you?
Well, I wanted to be an English professor. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was my. I was going to go back and sort of do a master's and then a PhD in English. Maybe I'll go back and do it eventually, but I haven't got around to it. So no, I find myself 20 years later, as you say. Some people would say I was somebody who knows a lot about HR, and that's really my focus these days, and I find it a really fascinating area.
So do you think your early fascination with I'm assuming you had a fascination with reading in the English language, very communication based. Has that helped you in any way along your journey?
A little bit. I mean, I did a business degree, and then I also did an English major at the same time. And what I found is mixing those two was really interesting.
Yeah.
And I think as part of then getting interested in workforces and getting interested in the whole HR side of things, I think that looking back was a little bit of a logical. Was very logical in terms of being sort of very analytic and understanding the numbers, but then also understanding the kind of culture side of things. Because if we think about the English language and English literature, it is about culture. So in retrospect, those things kind of have really helped me in my career. But I got fascinated about the idea of workforces really from the standpoint of early in the 1990s, just when PCs were starting to come into businesses. It was interesting, early in my career, I watched people struggle to sort of get to use PCs and understand how to use them. And I got fascinated by this idea of watching people learn how to deal with this new technology. And essentially just kind of grew from there, really. My career grew from helping people to understand how to use a PC through to now how do you understand a workforce of 100,000 people. So.
Right, so that's interesting then, because obviously your career has spanned over a long time of 20 years. What's the I mean, you mentioned technology, but what is that the fundamental change then over that period in terms of workforces? And
I would say it's one of the kind of underlying things. I think when it comes to workforce and talent, what's really changed is that if you think about 20 years ago, HR was called personnel, and that's what it was. It was an administration function, but now a lot of organizations call HR people. And they make it all about people, and it's about attracting and retaining your best workers. It's about building people's capabilities. It's much more strategic now. So it's grown really from an administration type function to a strategic part of an organization. And that's really what I've been a part of over the past 20 years, and what's constantly kept this interesting for me is watching something go from being very administration to very strategic. And that's really what I get passionate about, which is helping organizations understand the value of their people, and that's really where the value in the organization lies.
Okay. Wow. So you must have seen, as I've said, over 20 years, if you mentioned, you must have seen a number of different projects and overseen a number of different projects. Yeah. What's been the most challenging then?
I think there's kind of a couple, really. One that's probably late 90s when the internet was really booming, and then I'd say more recently. So I'll start with the one sort of back in the late 90s. It's a large telecommunications company that was really coming to grips with the idea of the internet being a product, and the internet being a set of products that you can sell to customers. So moving from being a traditional sort of it's all about the telephone and the telephone line to broadband and internet products. And so I designed and developed a program for this large telecom for 20,000 people to help them understand and be able to sell and service customers on these brand new products. If you think about 1998 when we were starting to do this, the idea of using the internet to book your holiday, I mean, that was very, so it was really about this telecom, its contact centers and its salespeople knowing how to have that conversation with the customer. Say, hey, you should buy broadband from us because you'll be able to book your holiday online and you'll be able to do all these great things. So that was a real challenge, moving people from who had never even been on the internet to helping them be able to talk intelligently and sell to customers. And that was a huge challenge across 20,000 people in 2 years. So that was a big one.
And so how about recently then? I mean, you mentioned that you're taking your current Maxim Consulting to a new level, hopefully. How's that working out for you, and how?
Well, you know, I'm an entrepreneur now. So I used to work in two very big companies. We grew Accenture to be, you know, nearly $20 billion company. Then IBM recruited me to come there, and at IBM, you know, that's a hundreds of billions dollar company. So I've worked in two very, very big places. My latest challenge is working at Maxim, which we're a small company. It's been around for 10 years, so it's not new or a startup, but it's a startup in the sense of we've done very, very well, and now it's about how do you take the business and double it. And so this is my latest challenge, and it's very, very different from what I've done in the past. So being an owner with my partners, my two partners, Suzanne Lehman and Clara Arnold, who were the founders. Really, how do we take that business from where it is today to doubling it? And it's fun. It's a real challenge there, particularly with the environment as it is in terms of the business and economics headwinds we have at the moment. But it's going well.
So you must have learned a great deal. Taking any business and trying to grow it from a medium size to a large size is very, very difficult, and something our readers and our viewers will recognise. Is there anything you've learned along the way that you perhaps can feed back to them by way of a tip or a hint of how to deal with things?
Well, the things I learned, so if we go back to 20 years ago when I joined Anderson Consulting, it was a very small company. It was about $400 million company. And we grew that. When I left, it was $19 billion. And the things I learned from that were, first of all, taking calculated risk. When you see the opportunity to take a calculated risk and go for it, can have huge upsides. And the company speaks for itself in terms of its success these days. And to watch that was amazing. But us as a company back then and the partners of that firm, took some very calculated, very educated guesses and risks, and they paid off. But the second part of that was having the right people, having the talent. So it was great to say we're going to go do X and try to do X and Y, but really it was all about having the best talent in place to deliver on that. And I think those two things you can apply to what was then a $400 million company to a $19 billion company, and I think you can apply that to a $4 million company. Calculated risks, right talent, it'll take you a long way.